42 disease clusters in only 13 states. A small sampling of disease clusters in 13 states was recently completed, and an issue paper was developed by the Natural Resources Defense Council and the National Disease Cluster Alliance to inform people about disease clusters. 42 clusters in only 13 states was confirmed. Here's all 13 states listed. But we've been doing this for a long time, and there's many states that are missing here. Many famous disease clusters, cancer clusters, such as Fallon, Nevada, Sierra Vista, Arizona, and many more. But again, this is just a small sample. We've investigated these clusters, and they all have one thing in common. Turbulently flowing groundwater producing electric fields and the environmental stressor in some areas above ground level. Many of these unsolved clusters are childhood disease, childhood cancer clusters. This should be a red flag to authorities. Why are so many young people getting sick inside a community? Believe me, it's not a coincidence. And the correlation can be shown. The disease or cancer cluster records or cancer registry knows the locations of residents who have cancer. We can show where these electric fields exist and measure the energy which causes the environmental stressor. Those people listed in the cancer cluster will be found spending a lot of their time in this stressor, and this can all be shown through medical testing too. In addition, healthy people won't be found spending a lot of their time over or in this stressor. The correlation has already been shown with dairy cows. 2010 dairy cow study. The cows were placed in stalls having this environmental stressor caused by the movement of water in aquifers. Their melatonin sulfate levels were tested for 3 weeks, then the stressor was removed for an additional 3 weeks, and their melatonin levels tested again throughout the process. Now this was done for a total of 3 complete cycles. When the cows were subjected to the stressor, their melatonin levels consistently dropped, which is bad. But when the stressor was removed, their melatonin levels consistently increased, which is good. And here's the actual time course graph. Off to the right-hand side lists the 10 dairy cows by name. And as you look at the chart, if you look at number 1, they were actually in the stall with stress before number 1. So they were being exposed to it before the test began. And then number 1, they actually removed the stressor by hanging a device above the stall, which took the stressor away from the dairy cows. And you can see from that point forward for the next 3 weeks that their melatonin levels all increased. Picture perfect. It's textbook. And then when you get to number 2, they removed the device that eliminated the stressor from the stall. And now you can see for the next 3 weeks how their melatonin levels dropped. When you get to line 3, again, they went through the cycle. They installed the device to remove the stressor, and now you can see the melatonin levels increasing again. When you get to line number 4, 3 weeks later, they removed the device that was taking the stressor away from the cows, and now you can see the melatonin levels dropping again. Now, when you get to number 5 to number 6, you can see that their melatonin levels were supposed to increase at that point, but the scientists explained that by this time the cows had been subjected to this on-off cycle for so many times their nighttime daytime rhythm was messed up. And so that's the reason why the scientists believe that they became very scattered at the end. The cows were completely out of rhythm, their bodies are out of sync, and that's the reason why it's not as textbook as it is earlier on the chart. Now the dairy farm correlation continues. Somatic cell count, they call that the SCC, is the measurement of white blood cells in cow's milk. This indicates the health of the cow and their milk. The SCC by law must be measured consistently on all dairy farms. A reading of less than 200,000 somatic cell counts per milliliter of milk indicates a healthy cow and milk, and levels above 300,000 indicates that the cow has stress and inflammation. Milk production is another measurement and is inversely proportional to the SCC measurement. The lower the SCC, the higher the milk production per cow, simply because inflammation is not present in the cow or its udder. Dairy Farm A and Dairy Farm B use the same feed and milking process. However, Farm A has somatic cell count levels of 550,000 and low production per cow, while Farm B has somatic cell count levels of 150,000, with a much higher production per cow. Why? The cows on Farm A are subjected to environmental stress inside their barn, while the cows on Farm B have no environmental stress. This is a farm that we helped in Oklahoma in 2009, and if you look at the purple arrow on the top slide, that's when we actually began by removing the stressor that was in the barn. They did have moving groundwater below. Their somatic cell count was 400,000 in tank milk. That means all cows together on that farm measured 400,000 on a consistent basis. That's high. There's a lot of stress. The cows have a lot of inflammation. They're not producing the milk quantity that they should be. And so we removed the stressor in August of 2009, and you can then see how the somatic cell count consistently lowered for the next 3 or 4 months. In fact, went all the way to 160,000, which is pretty healthy cow, good quality milk. If you look at the bottom slide or bottom part of that chart, you'll see the purple arrow again. That is the milk production at the day that we actually took the stressor out of the barn. And from that point forward, as the somatic cell counts lowered and the inflammation lowered, the production increased all the way, perfectly in proportion to the somatic cell reduction. So they go hand in hand as measurements. They're just inversely proportional. Now, how can you find out if this stressor exists in your home? If you live near or in a disease cluster, you can conduct your own self-test without needing the sensitive scientific test equipment used to measure the stressor. Go to the bed where the ill person sleeps, any serious illness, not just cancer, and take a mature dog with you, a dog who is normally calm. You can only do this test with dogs. Do not use a cat. And just take note to the illustration. There's 2 stressors on the one side of this bed. Now have the dog sit or lay on every square inch of the bed, not just one spot, because dogs will avoid the stress spot. And 2 seconds does not count. The dog must stay in each location of the bed for an extended period of time without being held. Now this test works because dogs will not stay over one of these stressors unless they're forced to stay. And do not conduct this test with the sick person in the bed, because the dog may stay there just out of loyalty. In fact, if you're using a dog that ever gets in that bed with a sick person, do not use that dog. You'll have to find a neighbor's dog or a different dog to use, because your test is going to be skewed. Because a dog will avoid this energy or this stressor. They always will, unless they're doing it out of loyalty. And we all know that a dog can be loyal. In fact, they'll harm themselves just to be loyal to their master. So you have to be very careful with this. You're better off to use a foreign dog if the case is that that dog gets in that bed, because the dog's going to do it out of loyalty. So be very careful. But I assure you, if you do this test properly, you will know. A dog will not lay in one of those stress locations if they can avoid it. And this test should also be conducted at any location where an ill person spends a lot of their time, their desk, etc. And it would be a mistake to think a person can only be under stress if they create the stress themselves through emotional or psychological means. In reality, stress is anything that causes the body to produce stress hormones such as cortisol and adrenaline. Stress is stress, and too many stress hormones can harm the body. If you place a sleeping person in a large microwave oven and turn it on, their body will be bombarded with stress and will try to defend itself by generating stress hormones and try until exhausted. Now this might be a dramatic example, but it's really no different. If you spend a lot of time, day in, day out, year in, year out, over one of these stressors, your body will produce this stress reaction over and over again. It might be a much slower process, but it's the exact same thing as being exposed to a microwave oven. Just much slower and much longer. The result's the same. It'll result in a compromised immune system. And a compromised immune system is dangerous, especially in today's world. We all deal with toxins and contaminants. If you have a weak immune system, you don't have the ability to fight off infections, nor do you have the ability to fight off cancer cells. Dr. Gerhard Hacker is a molecular scientist we work with. He's actually been working on this subject, electrical fields and stress generated from the movement of groundwater, for about 8 years now. As a molecular scientist, I've spent 30 years researching cancer and other diseases. I have no doubt that in addition to living a healthy lifestyle, understanding and correcting the stress caused by aquifers will improve more lives than most other single actions I know. We are based in the state of Maryland. Although not one of the 13 states mentioned earlier, Maryland has many areas labeled as disease clusters, so much so that several state senators moved to pass Bill 574 this year, 2011, in order to look deeper into the causes of cancer. Aquifers and Health Institute has the support of several state delegates and senators. However, the county health department, where we live, where we operate out of, has refused to meet with us since September of last year, 2010. And they have no idea what we know or what we can show them. I guess they intend to keep blaming these disease clusters on mere coincidence. Well, we intend to show they are not a coincidence. Disease is not a coincidence. If you have a disease or know somebody that has a disease, there's a reason for it. It's not a coincidence. The suffering of innocent people must stop. Innocent people are suffering from a problem which is simple to fix. So many children sick in one geographic area, it's not a coincidence. Quality of life reduced, people's lives cut short before their time. So you meet the love of your life, you decide to get married, you decide to move into a brand new house that you just purchased. You have no idea that there is an environmental issue in that house, one of these stressors. So you happen by accident to position your bed over top of this stressor. Over the next 4 or 5 years, it's such a slow process, you just slowly and slowly don't feel the same way as you used to. 5 years later, you're diagnosed with a serious disease. All to come to find out that it had to do with the fact that you were sleeping over one of these stressors. Or even worse, you have children. One of these children, their crib is placed over one of these stressors. Now, a child will try to avoid this energy if they can, just like a dog. That's why this information has got to become public, because innocent people are suffering for absolutely no reason at all. It's really that simple to fix. And our goal is to bring attention to this environmental stressor so people are aware it exists and can protect themselves and their families. You do not have to move from where you live now if you have the problem. Just protect yourself from the stressor. It's really easy. This is a simple yet critical health issue that needs immediate attention. We are Aquifers and Health Institute. We're a Maryland nonprofit. This is our website, and you'll find many of these studies that we talk about on that website. You can also contact us, pick the phone up, call your congressman, do whatever you need to do to get active in this, because I guarantee you that what we're saying is correct, it's accurate, and it can all be proven. The next 2 pages are the sources pages of the studies that we gathered to show you that the information is available. What we're saying is absolutely true. I'm not going to read each and every one of these to you, but there's a couple of them you want to pay particular attention to. Number 3 and 4 talk about stress hormones and the new role they play in speeding up cancer growth. The geomagnetic field affects cardiovascular regulation and the weakening of the immune system. That's really important because these electrical fields, we believe, distorts or modifies the geomagnetic field. And so there's studies that back up everything that we've said in this presentation. And that's now up to you to get active, to get involved. Authorities have never been able to solve 99.9% of these disease and cancer clusters, and there's a reason why. They're just not looking in the right location. Every bit of this can be shown, it can be proven, and we're here to help. We'd like you to get involved. Call up your state representative. Send us an email from our website. It's time that this information becomes public knowledge for everybody so people can protect themselves, and no longer will innocent people be harmed from something so darn simple.